This is Season 3, Episode 34 of In Touch with Terri, a podcast for aesthetics professionals. Today's episode is titled, Prioritizing Your Marketing Efforts for Optimal Return on Investment.
SEO and paid ads. Those are the two things that really drive in the patients. But in terms of the highest profit margin or the highest return on investment, it really is your search engine optimization. Because by the time that you put in that effort and you do get on the page one on Google in your city, you are getting so many new patients in from that it's really worthwhile. And once you've put in the effort to really get onto page one, with a good marketing agency, it's not too difficult to sort of just maintain those rankings. So I feel like that's a very important place to put your marketing dollars. And the other place is in paid advertising. Paid ads have an instant return on investment, meaning you pay X amount of dollars into ads, it equals X amount of new patients coming in, which equals X amount of revenue. It's very tangible. It's very easy to see the conversion rate. It's very easy to track. So if you put a healthy budget into your ads, it will pay itself over many, many, many times.
Welcome to In Touch with Terri, our power-packed podcast for the medical aesthetic industry that brings you expertise, authenticity, more importantly, real solutions that have proven to increase profitability, attract, convert, and retain more patients, and feature some of the top industry experts as guests. Hi, I'm Terri Ross, former Fortune 500 executive, international speaker, and founder and CEO of Apex by Terri Ross and Terri Ross Consulting. Today's podcast is something that is super near and dear to me. I think really important. It's always been important, but sometimes I think it's often overlooked. And the topic we're going to be talking about today is prioritizing your marketing efforts for optimal return on investment. I'm going to say it again because it's very critical. This isn't like a spaghetti tactic, throw it at the wall and hope it sticks, right? We're talking about prioritizing your marketing efforts for optimal ROI. And I am super pumped to have a good friend of mine and another female badass with Influx Media, Max Bayback and Erica Crawford. Max and I go, oh my God, we're going to age ourselves, Max, 14 years back to the days when I had Lasky. And Erica, such a pleasure to get to know her over the last 2 years. Again, another female badass with a company that you guys all know I'm pretty particular who I work with and pride myself on really working with the best of the best. So Max Bayback is the co-founder and chief strategy officer with Influx Media. He has over 14 years in marketing and PR, 8 years in aesthetics, has orchestrated tons of campaigns for a diversified range of companies. He's worked for Fortune 500 startups and tech companies, and he has a background in PR, finance, and software product management. And I have to say, it's been an honor working with him throughout the years, even right now with Apex. And Erica Crawford is the chief revenue officer with Influx Media. She has 10 years of sales and PR, 5 years of experience. Girl, you don't look that old in digital marketing. And she's consulted with existing groups, startup medical practices across the country. So I am super jazzed to have you guys on today. Thank you.
Thank you, Terri. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Terri.
You are so welcome. For those of you listening, for those of you that have never heard of Influx or you work with Influx, tell us a little bit about the company.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, thank you so much for having us, Terri. Really excited to have this conversation with you. I've always enjoyed following, your growth for yourself ever since we started working together years ago on Lasky. And it's been, I knew back then you had sort of a special formula and a special mix because I worked with so many practices and they often are missing that X factor. The doctors, the providers might be great. And that's so important, but to have someone that kind of puts the pieces together the way you do and the way you worked with us on the marketing side, it's always stayed with me. And so it's been really awesome to watch you and awesome now to be here on the show chatting with you. Influx is a company that myself and my co-founders started about 6 years ago now. We've spent much longer than that in the digital marketing space and in the aesthetic medicine or specifically patient acquisition for aesthetic medicine. Mm-hmm. But we set out to create something that we felt like there was an opportunity there for us. We'd had experience working with Fortune 500 companies, with tech startups, with e-commerce companies, and we saw practices and strategies. When I say practices in the sense of marketing practices, best practices that were being utilized in those industries that hadn't migrated over into our field here. But we saw this awesome space with so much potential. And that's definitely been validated. And it's proving that this space is just growing like crazy. We love the people we were working with here. We love the technologies that were coming to market that were really life-changing. And we just saw an opportunity there to do something and bring those strategies that we just didn't see anyone else deploying there. I also think it's an industry where, design and brand really matter. And, other medical specialties, I think you can get away with something a little bit more standard, but I think you really have to set yourself apart because people are judging you based off, they're coming to you as someone who's going to help them achieve their aesthetic goals. And you have to have something that really sets you apart aesthetically. And so my partners and I really loved helping aesthetic practitioners, create their brand. And so it just kind of stuck. And it's been something we've been doing now for about 6 years. And now we serve some of the top plastic surgeons and medical spas across the country. And, we don't have any plans of stopping soon. So that's a little bit. I love it.
And Max, let me ask, and then Erica, I want to come to you real quick. Does the company plan to stick in this vertical? My thoughts are really distinguished in that I do really value and believe in this industry and choosing a partner that has a specialty, right, in a vertical. Is that where the company plans to stay in this aesthetic space?
Yeah, we're really passionate about being niche down into it. Occasionally we get someone who comes along that's another type of fee for service medical. Sure. And I think that there's some crossover there and it can work. But we really like being able to have all of our people on our team really understand the space. We're not picking up the phone after you kind of come on board to have us help you with your branding and marketing and going, okay, so tell us what you do.
Right. Or let me go do some research on that. I love that.
Yeah. And to expound upon that just a little bit more, I think that in the early days of digital marketing, if you understood the broad strokes of what worked in digital marketing, you could apply it to a lot of different industries pretty well and have success. I think now we live in the era of the niche and you have to specialize in an industry. Otherwise, you're handicapping your clients, in my personal opinion. So, Erica, I don't know if you have anything to add to that, but I know that you work with practices across the country and it's been really nice to be kind of specialized.
Yeah, Max, I would say that specializing is really important, especially in this industry. The truth is there's a lot to learn about it, especially in the non-surgical space when it comes to all the different devices, neurotoxin, everything that's going out there. If you don't actually spend a lot of time as the marketing agency itself, learning about every single new product that's coming on the market and learning exactly how to communicate about it, how to write copy for it, how to market it. Is there brand recognition for it or not? Is it new or is it not? But if you don't spend the time as the agency to really learn all of that, you're not going to do a great job when it comes to actual marketing of those products. So for us, if we started to go in different directions, we would not be able to have the bandwidth to really properly market the aesthetics industry. And we've really learned that. So we're not going any other way.
Well, I love what you both have to say, and I applaud both of your responses simply because I think, and I know, one of the questions I always get is always about what company should I go to? How much should I spend in SEO? Oh, they're good at design, but not good at this. I mean, it's such a free for all because I think people think that a website isn't as important as it actually is. And I know we've had this conversation that you really can't have one without the other, right? You can have a badass website, but yet if the staff isn't trained to convert, who cares? Or it's in the reverse. So if somebody were opening up, whether it's a plastic surgery practice or a medical spa, where would you recommend that they spend their dollars, their marketing budget? Where should they put the budget?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I know Erica has a lot to say about this, but one thing I just want to say, just overarching philosophically for us, there's too many choices these days of places where you can spend your budget. And also I think about time as money too. So your resources, which is time or money. And they're both extremely valuable. Time may even be more important than money as a medical provider, as an aesthetic provider, where your time is extremely rare. You have to make choices. And a lot of these platforms take a longer, you have to really be in for the long haul to see any return. Some of them, you don't really control and own your audience. You have to think about that to make sure that, you're not building your house on rented land. That's an analogy we use in social media. And I'm sure, I think I've heard you say that. I might have even stole that from you. But, so our core philosophy really is to start from the website, and it's sort of a hub and spoke strategy. That's a term I use for it, where the website is your hub, and think about every channel that you can feed traffic to that website through as one of the various spokes. And I think that from all the conversations you and I have had, Terri, I think that aligns with. I know you broadly speaking, you have a system where you teach sort of 7 steps to that seven-figure business, and it's these concentric circles, as you've kind of educated me. And it starts in the middle with your website and your brand. So I think we're very aligned in that. And that's just philosophically from day one, you have to build an asset that is yours and that you own and that you can really control. And you need to think about that as the foundation of your house. And if you don't have that, or if you have that, but it's 5 years old and it clearly dates you and you need to be ahead of your competition, then that's where you start. So Erica is our Chief Revenue Officer and is often the first point of contact when someone reaches out to inquire about working with us. And as such, she ends up being sort of a consultant to them, whether they're years in and they're trying to figure out where is the next move for them in their marketing, or they've had a hard time with their marketing over the years, or they're just getting started. So I know she's really used to these types of questions, and I'm sure she's got something to say on that too.
Thank you, Max. This is a really important question because I think regularly about profit margins, return on investment, really how to take your marketing dollars and really have it maximized. So in the very beginning, when you're just starting a practice or maybe a few years in, there's different sort of stages, but I want to talk about being a few years into practice or just starting. So you want to initially put your marketing dollars to where you're going to get the most profit, which basically means the most number of new patients coming in quickly. So for me, I've definitely seen with our clientele that is first the website, as Max mentioned earlier, but that is the central hub. But then also SEO and paid ads. Those are the two things that really drive in the patients. So SEO is a longer game. You're not going to go onto page one instantly. It takes work, it takes time and effort. But in terms of the highest profit margin or the highest return on investment, it really is your search engine optimization. Because by the time that you put in that effort and you do get onto page one on Google in your city, you are getting so many new patients in from that it's really worthwhile. And once you've put in the effort to really get onto page one with a good marketing agency, it's not too difficult to sort of just maintain those rankings. So the effort is the first year or so, depending on your demographic, getting there in the first place. So I feel like that's a very important place to put your marketing dollars. And the other place is in paid advertising. Paid ads have an instant return on investment, meaning you pay X amount of dollars into ads, it equals X amount of new patients coming in, which equals X amount of revenue. It's very tangible. It's very easy to see the conversion rate. It's very easy to track. So if you put a healthy budget into your ads, it will pay itself over many, many, many times. The only downside of ads and doing ads only is that it's temporary, meaning you put money in, you get patients, you get revenue. But if you don't put money into it that next month, it's not going to continue. SEO is more of a long-term play. But I would say that for the beginning of any practice where you should put the majority of your marketing dollars to get you the most patients on an immediate basis, it really is your website, your ads, and your SEO. And those are the three things you really just need to start off with.
I love it, you guys. It's like, amen. We're all speaking the same language because I come at it now from the data side. Because I know, Max, I've reached out to you, both of you, many times, because it's one thing to do those tactics and strategies. It's another when they're not measuring the data, right? What is that cost per lead? How long did it take for me to acquire a new patient? Did they come back once? Did they come back again? Like, what is the retention rate? So the buck can't stop just at that marketing level. The data, whether it's the data looking at the reports you guys give, how many patients are coming in, you're right. It can yield such a high return on investment if people pay attention to the numbers, right? What would you guys say? Because fees can range, right? And I know it's based on state and city and demographic and what you want to try to rank for. Is there an average fee? Is that even a fair question, right? To kind of give the audience what that might be, or does it vary?
You're speaking for SEO services.
Yes.
It really does matter in demographic. Like if you are in a large city versus a small town, the fee is going to greatly vary. But depending on where you are, what city you're in, maybe anywhere between $1,500 to $4,000 a month, I think is roughly the amount of effort that you should be spending towards not just your SEO, but I'm really including website maintenance, adding new content, a really good leads tracking system. Basically, that should be the range of anything related to your website and your Google rankings. It should be around 1,500. Yeah.
Sort of the foundational package of what you need. And just the one thing I wanted to comment on, Terri, is you mentioned tracking and following the numbers and really paying attention to it. One of the things I noticed that makes that hard is when people don't even really know what their marketing strategy is. So if they're trying kind of shotgun marketing, try a little bit of this, do a little bit of that, pray and pray, try, and hopefully something works. You don't even know what you're measuring. So that's one of the reasons why it's so important to prioritize your marketing efforts and build on a foundation. Or I sort of look at it as a marketing ladder where there's so many things you could do and it becomes overwhelming to pick which one. Each rung is some strategy that you could deploy. And you just take one step and then the next one and the next one. And eventually you get to the top and you can beat out your competition. But I think it's actually important to be methodical and sort of do it in a linear fashion. And the analogy that I sometimes try to give, I need to do like a diagram of this, but it's not that challenge. It's not hard to imagine, is if you take that same ladder and you turn it on its side with all those different marketing ideas, you're definitely not going up. You're just going to go sideways, which is what happens when people try to do too many things. So when you really build on a foundation, not only are you steadily gaining progress and building, you know what to measure. And that's so important to what you said, to understanding, I think it's so amazing when you talk about, do they come back? How many times did they come back? What's their real lifetime value? Then you can actually answer the question for yourself. How much should I be spending? Well, if you know that your average lifetime value is X, you can actually spend a little more and get aggressive and go and acquire a bunch more lifetime patients. I mean, I love your philosophy. What is it you always say? You can't
manage what you don't measure. And I think I want to just hit on one point that you just said, back to where do you put the marketing dollars? So while Erica just did a phenomenal explanation of, SEO and PPC and your website, that it all has to channel and funnel there. I agree 1000% in my 7 steps. The first step is your website, because I can't help you with that. That is your external brand. That is the first point, right, of contact that somebody's going to see about you. But when we're talking about where do we put those marketing dollars, obviously I come at it from the data side too, and making sure that these practices understand what treatments yield the highest return on investment. Because then it can ultimately feed right into what you do, so they can stop doing certain things, start doing more of, and reallocate those dollars, right? So that you guys can even be more successful when you're working with these practices. So next question I'd love to ask is, at what point should the practices you work with really look out and branch? And I love that. I love the analogy, Max, that you just said. It is so true. You're going to lay that ladder on the side and you're not going to go anywhere. But at what point do you recommend that they start to branch out off into different channels?
So, yeah, I mean, I think it varies a little bit for everyone and which channels they're going to dive into. It's going to matter what they natively feel really comfortable what kind of content they like to create. For example, if you take social media, there's different types of content on different platforms, and you're going to figure out what you really want to invest your time into. But ultimately, there's a point a few years into it where you go, okay, I have some additional revenue that I want to invest in kind of going to that next level. I would say there's a point there where you're looking to, you're having success, but you maybe have kind of plateaued and you will now want to invest more into what's going to sort of catapult you. And I know that's another question that Erica gets asked a lot by practices that have hit, whether they've hit a plateau or they're in a range and they've kind of gotten past the startup phase. And Erica, I know you kind of have this conversation almost every day. So what do you like to advise people?
Thanks, Max. So I get a lot of clients, maybe not a lot, but a decent amount, that ask me, well, what about trying this new innovative idea? Or let's try this new marketing strategy, whatever those are. And I say that in the beginning, or when you're on a tighter budget, let's go down the tried and proven path. Mm-hmm. The tried and proven path is really the website, the SEO, the ads, the social media ads, the things that really have worked for hundreds and thousands of practices. And we've all seen that here. Mm-hmm. So if you're going to try something new and innovative, I mean, we as Influx Marketing have definitely helped clients go outside the box and try new things. And we love that concept. But if you're going to try something new, make sure that you have the budget, that whatever you're going to allocate towards that thing, let's say you want to spend $10,000 on some innovative new idea. It may not pan out. It may not work. It may not get you those leads. And it may, but it's new and it's not tried yet. So just be willing that you might lose those marketing dollars. And if you're in a place in your practice where that's not a big deal and it's worthwhile to try different things, to try to hit gold, then let's go. But if not, let's stick to the things that we know work.
See, track your data. I'm not a good singer. I'm not a good singer, so I'm not going to try to sing a song about it. Again, everything that I love what you guys are saying is really all about managing what this topic is, right? Your ROI. Or else, like what Max said, spray and pray, right? You're just kind of going to hope something sticks. So I know people have a ton of choices out there. I mean, I will get asked questions. Hey, my mother, brother, sister, can do my website, or they're going to do my branding, or they're going to do my ads, or whatever it is. What things should a practice do in-house, right, versus outsource to an agency? And because this just came to me yesterday, an old client called me in Cincinnati, and she's like, hey, I really just want to hire this young girl to come into my office and do the social media. I'm going to save my thoughts because I'd rather ask you guys as it relates to this question. Like, what are your professional recommendations?
I'll speak to this because I get asked this question all the time. And I think sometimes I surprise people by telling them, yes, we can do it, but I think it's best that you do this in-house. Okay, so organic social media. Let's talk about that since you touched on that. You should do that in-house.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. It's not that we haven't managed social media accounts. We have and we do, but we are not physically in your practice. We are not going to be able to grab our phones and capture that amazing piece of content. We are relying on you, the client, to send us content. So having a really good marketing manager or social media manager in-house who is running around all day at the practice, capturing moments, capturing content, uploading it onto your social media, posting regularly, that has so much value. And it is definitely something that I highly suggest that practices do in-house. Now, if you don't have that person and you do not feel savvy enough to do anything on social media, we will guide you and we will help you with some basic branding of your social media. But you're not going to get a huge following from hiring any agency to do it. Some of the biggest practices with the largest social media followings, those doctors or those nurses or whoever it is in the practice, they are doing their own posts. They might get help with some engagement, but the vast majority of them are doing it themselves. And that is really where that original content that people are very interested in comes from. So I would say leave it to a marketing agency for the more technical aspects, right? The building of your website, the creating of paid ads, the search engine optimization, things like that. But when it comes to creating original social media content, do it in-house.
But let me ask you a question. I agree with that part from that organic perspective. But what I've also seen not happen is that, let's call it some, millennial, right? They're super savvy at social, but they don't understand the industry and they don't have the strategy. So it's not just posting some random thing. Somebody just did a Fraxel or a Halo or a cool sculpting and woo, I'm going to just post this thing. And then they're wondering why they get no engagement or no likes. So can you talk to me a little bit about the mix between the organic, but then needing the strategy? And then how are they getting it out to all the social spaces versus one post here, one over here, and it's not really doing anything for you?
No, Terri, you have such a great point right there. So having support from an agency where it's a combined effort is a bit different. So you should always have the organic content coming in-house and everything there. But when it comes to the more technical aspects, when to post, where to post it, what is right on the right platform, what you're going to post on Instagram, TikTok, and Facebook, not necessarily always going to be the same thing. That is where having an agency has a lot of value. As long as you are really aware as that practice owner that it is a joint effort, meaning you can't just sort of push it off to somebody else to do and expect it to be amazing. It needs to be a combined effort of content and then more of the technical skill and the branding of it, really make sure it goes in the right places. And so it goes out to as many people and potential patients as possible.
That's my school of thought. I really do think that it is a joint effort of both, because you have to have that bigger picture. I've seen too many people suffer and stray, and they're just wondering why it's not working. And I really do think that big picture strategy, and I love what you said, not every platform. And there are so many verticals these days, guys, that you can't, just kind of tiptoe on this little one vertical. And over here, I think I did an Instagram live and I talked about like 15 different verticals. And if you want a presence, you really need to own those verticals on a you need to show up consistently and kind of have a plan. Max, anything you wanted to add here?
Going back to your initial question, which was what should you take in-house and what should you outsource to an agency? And I think a lot of people struggle with this. They sort of think of these things as mutually exclusive. And I don't think it really, for the most part, especially today when so much of what you do and so much of your success relies on your digital presence and your digital outreach, I wouldn't look at it that way. I would look at it as more of what your resources are, what stage you're in. Oftentimes when you're just starting out, you're right. People do rely. I had someone just the other day who's starting a med spa, and honestly, we just offered them some help because they don't quite have the budget yet, and they were looking for some help on setting up some ad campaigns. And they have a friend who's going to do it, and they straight up said, "This person doesn't have any domain knowledge in our field, though, but that's what we're going to try." So fine. At a certain point, then, when you're ready to hire an agency, and honestly, in all honesty, most agencies you can hire for less than one person's salary, and you get all of that domain knowledge and all of that technical expertise, and you're not having someone learn on your time. You're having someone who's, hopefully, if they're doing their job right, they're taking applied learnings of what they're understanding about practices across the country and helping you to get, immediately you're on the playing field. You're not trying to figure out how to get in the game because they understand how to get you in the game. And that's really why an agency is going to help you fast track to, being at the table and getting patients right away. A lot of times people come to us frustrated about things they've tried. And I think, no offense to anyone, but they're dealing with marketers that are having to learn on their dime. So don't do that. So now you've got just enough budget to hire an agency. Should you hire that agency to do your social media? No, for the reasons that Erica said, but also no, because if you're just to that level of budget, the ROI on your social media is going to be long. It's going to take a while. So it's all about setting expectations. That's something that Erica and we all really believe in when we're talking to somebody new, is we're not going to hype you on something. We want you to really understand what we see as the time horizon for each of these efforts. And so if you want to start on building that social media now and you see that as a long-term payback, because it definitely will have it, but you got to stay at it and you got to be willing to do it for a long time. But if that's not quite where you are now, then like Erica said, you go to paid advertising and start by having someone, probably not full-time, but someone who's got, you're giving them a couple jobs. They maybe are doing something administratively in the practice, and then they're also able to spend a little bit of time creating content. We have multiple levels of how we collaborate with people on social media. Because sometimes people in the practice, you might have some staff that have a little time to capture some content, but actually just even writing the caption and scheduling it out and doing it on all those platforms does take time. And these platforms are constantly changing, and there's new hacks and ways to exploit these platforms or best practices, and you want someone to help you with that. So there's so many different levels of how you can collaborate with an agency. So we have a lot of people where we say, if we want us to help you, we definitely can, but ideally we have a point person there. I think people just don't realize how many links there have to be in the chain to have good social media. So ideally us plus someone who's helping to feed it to us and able to help us capture that organic content on the ground. Worst case scenario, we tell people, we just adamantly do not recommend this. But if you're in a position where you have no bandwidth whatsoever to do social, but you don't also want to have people who find you on another platform, Google or through a friend or whatever, and then they go to your social and see that the last post was from November of 2000 something. And they immediately wonder what's wrong.
Yeah.
And we're all laughing because that's common, unfortunately.
Oh, yes. Well, first of all, I just want to say thank you so much. This is what I love working with you guys personally and professionally, just for being authentic and for being transparent and for being operating with integrity, because I think that there are a lot of firms that'll just want to bullshit you and take the money. But more importantly, wherever you guys are listening from, rewind that section. It's all phenomenal content, but I want you to write it down because I know that I get asked that all the time. And just to kind of recap what Erica and Max both said is that you absolutely can. No agency can give you the organic piece, but it's not just somebody who's like bopping around your practice, fly by the seat of your pants, right? There has got to be some methodology, some strategy, some tactic, and then some coaching and advice. Because to Max's point, you want this to work. You want to be consistent. You want to show up. You want people to look at you as an expert. But on all of these verticals, that takes some level of experience. So thank you. I think that was such invaluable information. Let's kind of jump into ads, because I know I've asked you guys just even recently, right? Should somebody spend in ads? I mean, I love it. We can just bounce that stuff off of each other. And when it comes to paid media, where do you think that practices should focus more, on Google or on Facebook?
Well, it could be a little bit different in different demographics. Generally speaking, the rule of thumb is surgical on Google, non-surgical on Facebook ads.
Oh,
make it very simple. It doesn't always have to be that way. There are circumstances where that might cross over, But the non-surgical ads often do better on Facebook. They're a little bit less expensive. The profit margin then becomes a little bit larger. You generally get plenty of them. But for the surgical procedures, there's more people just going onto Google and searching for it. They're looking for whatever procedure that they want. It's really easy to capture their attention there. And although the cost on Google is much higher than the cost on Facebook ads. Now, when I say Facebook, of course, Facebook owns Instagram, so we're talking social media paid ads, right? The profit margin and what you're getting is a little bit higher quality for Google, and it all works out because even though it's more expensive, there's a higher profit margin with that surgical ad. But for the Facebook advertising, you're going to get a lead around $25 to $75, depending on your demographic again, but per your lead. And you're going to get plenty of them. So if you're doing ads for Botox or cool sculpting or whatever it is that you have in your practice, we generally will direct people for non-surgical on Facebook and for surgical on Google.
God, look at me. I'm always loving learning something, right? If we're not learning, We're not growing, guys. Max, anything to kind of chime in there?
We like to break it down into that kind of simple rule. Like she said, there are definitely exceptions. And there's times when other platforms make sense too. But I think people do make that question a little bit more complicated than it has to be. So it's nice to simplify it and say, broadly speaking, put it in these two buckets. And I'll just give you a little more context as to why. So, and I might be repeating what Eric already said, but on the non-surgical side, well, on a per procedure basis, you're usually looking at lower margin. Of course, you're looking at usually repeat, depending on what the procedure is, but you're looking at repeat. So there is a better lifetime value, but right up front, you may not get them to come back. So you want to make sure you recoup your cost of patient acquisition. Ideally, you have to recoup it on that first visit. So you need to not spend as much. Facebook and Instagram ads are cheaper for sure. Just categorically, they're cheaper. With that comes a caveat that they require more follow-up.
Yeah.
To get them to actually convert. And that goes back to if you just follow the path of how someone got there, they were, unlike Google where they're typing in something with intent, they were on Facebook or Instagram scrolling, catching up with friends, doing something different. They had less intent. You have to pull them out of what they're doing and entice them with something, with a call to action that says, this is something you're interested in. So typically speaking, they're starting off higher in the funnel. If you imagine the funnel where you pour in a lot of people and fewer people come out the bottom, prospective patients, they're higher in the funnel. Because you're sort of waving at them and saying, hey, this is something you should care about, but they're not sure yet. So you're going to have to continue to pull them down that funnel. Whereas with Google, you're getting the cream of the crop lower down the funnel. They've already decided that they want to do this. If you're targeting the right keywords on Google, you're finding people who are well past deciding when they want to do it. Now they're looking at who they want to do it with. And that's like when you really want to nab them. Well, that's why they cost more. But again, on Google, you can afford to spend more when you have higher margins. So if you want to take that rule and expand it a little bit, just take your higher margin stuff and do it on Google. Yeah. Surgery typically is higher margin. So so that's just a little bit more context. I could probably talk on that forever, but just a couple other little bits about it. Like on Facebook and Instagram, while it can be an uphill battle to educate people on new procedures that there's not a lot of consumer awareness for, that's your only choice when there isn't a lot of consumer awareness. On search, there's not going to be so much search because people don't know about it yet. We saw that with Cool Tone when it came out right at the beginning of the pandemic, as we were literally watching the Google search numbers and they were climbing as Allergan spent more on DTC. So then we said search is more fruitful now. But in the beginning, we really had to focus on Facebook and Instagram. So it depends on consumer awareness, depends on profit margins. And I could probably talk about that for an hour, but there's a little more context.
I love it. I love it. Well, there is more segments to go, but sticking on the social media advertising, I think it's super important too, because it's funny when we do discovery calls with clients. I do ask, right? And we had this huge, 21-page document, but I'll ask where does the majority of your business come from? A lot of times people don't know. I mean, a lot of them don't know, or they know, but they'll say social, which is a little bit harder to track. And I think to what you guys both said, this is the long game, right? Because there's probably a lot of looky-loos, type it in the chat or the DM, hey, how much does that cost? Which is almost the antithesis of just like what I teach, because then you take away any value prop that you have when you're just like, hey, it's $1,400 or whatever it is, right? But on that note, how much effort should practices and providers put in to social when we just got done talking about the importance of the strategy and the different verticals for it to be effective?
It varies depending on demographic. I know I say that a lot, but it really makes a big difference. If you're paying for ads in New York City versus Charlotte, North Carolina, it's going to be different.
When you talk about demographic, also, like if you were targeting an older, like say you have a practice that's more around facelift or something, you might say you could put a little less stress on certain social media platforms or something like that. So when you're talking about demographic, both geographically and also sort of what your patient age range is that you're targeting, things like that.
Right. And even to that, your point, Max, is how specific the procedure is. Like, let's say you're doing something on revision rhinoplasty and it's very specific, right? It's going to be less expensive because less people are going after that same keyword. So these are all things to factor in. But I generally say that you want to start with at least $1,000 going towards Facebook and, Instagram paid ads, and at least $2,000 going towards Google paid ads. So that I would say is like the monthly minimum to start with on both of those paid ads. And doing anything less it's not really going to be worthwhile in my personal opinion. And from what we've seen across our clientele, like I've definitely had clients come and be like, we would like to pay $500 for this. And it's not going to generate enough leads. It's not going to be worth it. And I don't want to digress too much. And I do want to say this because I hear this all the time from prospective clients. Well, I tried doing social media ads. I tried doing Google ads and they did not work. And I have this conversation, I would say, at least with 80% of the people I talk to. And I do want to talk to this point for just a second on it because I feel like a lot of people are concerned.
Sure.
So there are different things that are easier and harder in marketing. So I guess I'm sort of like unveiling everything of like the inner workings of an agency here a little bit. But I would say, so obviously we design websites and that takes a lot of effort and coding and there's SEO and, everything that we do, photo shoots, video shoots, whatever. So doing really high quality social media ads, managing them is actually one of the more difficult aspects of marketing. It gets done incorrectly all the time. You have to have incredible landing pages that are on your website. You have to really target the correct keywords. There's a lot of effort that goes into properly putting up ads, both on Google, but I would say even more so on social media. Like there is a lot of ways to do ads incorrectly. So many times we have taken over somebody's account. We saw the ad that was being done before and it was just poorly performing and it wasn't being done correctly, or it was done with some automated service, or it was outsourced somewhere. It really actually takes a human being to manage your ads and look at them every day to make sure that they're performing well and making the appropriate adjustments when necessary to really get your ads to perform in the correct way. So I'm just putting that out there that if you've tried ads before, they haven't worked, they work. They work 100% of the time, actually. We've never had them not work in our agency, but they're often done wrong. And I feel like out of all the different subjects that come in marketing, it's the thing that we generally find is done the most wrong. Like it's the thing we have to fix the most compared to almost any other aspect of the services we deliver. So it's just something I like to say that if you've done it before, just do it again, but just have it get done right. That's all.
No, thank you, Erica. That was amazing. And I think often overlooked and not told as candidly as you just put it. Look, I launched a new company and, talking to you guys, it does require this finesse and this specialization that not everybody has. So I appreciate that so much. And I appreciate this topic because I think, again, we all can agree now more than ever, it's so vital to really, we don't just have a medical practice anymore. It's a business, and if we're not running it like such, we're not going to make money. It's not going to sustain itself. And I think that if you want to stand out in a very busy crowd, you have to invest. This isn't, and I do a lot of lectures and I talk about this. People look at it, I don't have the budget and I don't have the money. Well, okay, do you want to kind of be mediocre? Because I know nobody went to medical school just to be average, right? That was a very costly degree to get. And so when you choose the best of the best, you get what you pay for, that old adage. And I believe it so very much. And I also believe that it's never freaking about the price. It's never about the price when you get value and results and expertise and convenience. So I know we're all in alignment with that. Erica, do you want to make a comment, honey, on something?
When you said, speaking of value, everything you just said was so spot on. But this is also why we enjoy working with you so much, Terri, and working with Apex, because the value that you bring in terms of tracking and converting those leads, right? I just discussed how much effort it takes to actually manage things properly. But nothing is more painful, at least for me personally, as a marketing agency, working really hard to get a practice a lot of leads. And they are mismanaged, they are not converted properly, or maybe they're asking for us to do something or like some sort of ads on something that is not particularly high profit margin, that's not really going to be worthwhile. And that's kind of painful for us to watch. And having your services there and having the tracking there and having the help sales wise to actually convert all of those leads, it's really one big picture, and it's all worth investing in, because end of the day, everything that we're talking about is getting new patients in and increasing your revenue. That's it. That's all this is.
Well, I just wanted to say this was, again, I'm blessed for the people I surround myself with, because you truly are experts in your space. I value our friendship. I value the professionalism. I value the expertise you bring to the industry. And for anybody who is interested in a new website, in the services that Influx has to offer, where can my tribe, where can this audience find you on anything that you want to offer them if they're listening to this podcast?
You can find us on our website, influxmarketing.com. We also have our own podcast, which Terri was on. You were on a few episodes ago, so you guys got to go check out Terri's episode. It's called Next Level Practices. We're putting up on a page on the website where you can get to all those episodes. That'll be up shortly, but you can find that on YouTube and all the places where you podcast. And if you are interested, I think like I said, Erica ends up consulting, whether people come on board with us or not. It's a very consultative experience to first just talk and find out what your needs are and whether we're a fit. And I think I recently was just listening to, I jumped on a call with her and a new potential client. And I think you're going to come away with something where we can guide you and counsel you on where to go, whether we're a fit or not. And we'll be really honest with you. So I think that's kind of what we offer. We don't really have hey, we'll offer you this, if you call us this week or something. It's just more, we'll give you sort of a breakdown and analysis of what you're doing right, what you're doing wrong, what you should be doing. And that would be Erica. So yeah, Erica, I don't know if you want to.
Yeah, say anybody who is coming to us from listening to this podcast or working with Terri, just reach out to us through our website, but just say that you found us from this podcast, and I'll personally take an hour and do a consultation with you, and you'll have something to take away from that either way.
And I love that, you guys. And I think back to the topic again, it's your marketing efforts and an optimal ROI. Back to everything that I think is the biggest focus this year is that we know you guys were all shut down for many months. You've lost a lot of business. It's more important now than ever. I'm sorry to sound so passionate about it, but you have to understand your data. You have to understand what yields you the biggest net profit on a procedure, or what's your revenue per hour, per room, per surgery. So that once you know that, everything that Influx is talking about right now, how much do you spend in your marketing budget? What channels do I do? Where do I do my social media? It's not just all one big glob out there, right? It's for a purpose. Erica said it. The sole purpose of all of our efforts here today is so that you guys not just increase revenue, because you guys can all be busy, right? But that doesn't mean you're profitable. So how do we take these efforts and get you the patients in the door, get you the exposure you need, right? Get you that credibility that you need, and have you be converting patients, right? That are, again, ultimately yielding you the highest return on investment. So Max, Erica, thank you so much. Super pumped for this segment. I think you gave away such, again, invaluable information that I hope everybody took some notes. Please call them, reach out. And if you love this segment, please leave a comment, share it with your peers that can benefit from this. Thank you again so much. And I look forward to seeing you soon.
Thanks for listening to In Touch with Terri. For more information regarding Apex, the aesthetic game changer, visit apexplatform.com. That's apxplatform.com. We'll include links to everything in the episode notes, including links to all of the ways that you can follow Terri Ross Consulting on all social media platforms. Please don't forget to subscribe to the podcast from whichever platform you might be listening from. Thanks again for listening, and we look forward to you joining us on the next episode of In Touch with Terri.